And it appears it was as simple as an unsaid thank you. Wrap your head around that, but there's more to it in the arrest affidavit that we have gone through. So in the affidavit, 41-year-old Cecilia Simpson held the door open for the now suspect, and that is 22-year-old Keona Hampton. And the affidavit says that Hampton then got upset because Simpson didn't say thank you for her holding the door. Well, words were then exchanged right outside that storefront, and then the two and a witness, so three in total, ended up going to a different store in the same shopping area. This is on Wheatland Road. More words then are exchanged there, and according to the affidavit, Hampton then threw a drink bottle towards Simpson and a witness, and it was at that point that everything became physical. The witness steps away, according to the affidavit, and then Hampton pulls out a gun. Simpson was hit, and she later died from her injuries.
It was supposed to be an ordinary afternoon, one of those quiet, unremarkable days you barely remember later. A quick stop at PetSmart, a simple errand, maybe to grab some food for the family dog, a little kindness for a loyal pet who always waited at the door. But what happened inside that store was anything but ordinary, because for 52-year-old Cecilia Simpson, a devoted mother, grandmother, and daughter, that errand turned into a nightmare no one could have imagined. It started over something so small, so trivial, that it's hard to even believe it could spark such violence. A thank you. Just two simple words. Words that should bring peace, not pain. But that day, those words ignited something dark. And by the time it was over, Cecilia lay lifeless in a parking lot, her loved one's world shattered in an instant. Eyewitnesses say there was confusion, people ducking behind cars, store employees calling 911, pets barking frantically inside carriers. A scene of chaos unfolding in a place where people came for leashes and treats. When police arrived, the truth began to unravel. A story of senseless anger, wounded pride, and a moment of gratitude that was met not with warmth, but with bullets. In the days that followed, the community of Duncanville, Texas, was left in disbelief. How could something like this happen? Over words so kind, so harmless? And for Cecilia's mother, her grief turned to a mission, to speak out, to remind the world who her daughter really was. Because behind the headlines and flashing blue lights was a woman with the heart of gold, someone who spread joy in every room, who cared deeply for others, who always believed in giving thanks. But now, her family is the one left saying thank you. To those seeking justice, to those remembering her name, to those who refuse to let her story fade away. This is not just another story of violence. It's a story about kindness, and how even the smallest moment can reveal how fragile humanity truly is. Today, we're going to walk through the heartbreaking case of Cecilia Simpson, a woman who went to PetSmart and never made it home. And as we do, remember this. Sometimes the words we take for granted, thank you, please, I'm sorry, hold more power than we realize. This is the story of Cecilia Simpson. Welcome to Lat True Crime Stories. I am your host. Today we are breaking down one of the most twisted cases you've ever seen. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button, smash the like button, and leave your comment to tell us where you're watching from. Let's build this community together. Now let's get into it. Before the chaos, before the police lights and the heartbreak, there was simply Cecilia Simpson, a warm, kind-hearted woman from Duncanville, Texas, who lived her life grounded in faith, love, and everyday kindness. She was the kind of person who made life better for everyone around her, often with something as simple as a smile or a few kind words. Her family called her a light, and that's exactly what she was: steady, bright, and good-hearted. Cecilia had built her life around her loved ones. She was a daughter, a sister, and a proud grandmother who adored her family more than anything. Her social media was filled with photos of family gatherings, birthdays, and encouraging messages, the kind that made people feel seen and valued. Her mother, Brenda Jackson, would later describe her as someone who saw the best in everyone, even when they didn't see it in themselves. That's who Cecilia was, the type of person who always said please, excuse me, and thank you. Words that most people take for granted. But for her, they weren't just manners, they were small acts of grace. It was a mild Saturday afternoon, March 23rd, 2024. The air was calm, and the rhythm of life in Duncanville moved like any other weekend. Families were shopping, kids were laughing, and people were out running errands. Cecilia decided to stop by PetSmart, just off Highway 67. It was one of her regular stops, a familiar, harmless errand for pet supplies. She parked, stepped out of her car, and walked toward the store, likely thinking of the simple joys of the day ahead. She greeted an employee inside, smiled at a couple with a dog, maybe even paused to chat. It was typical of her. She never rushed through moments that could hold connection. But just outside, a very different kind of energy was building. In the parking lot, another woman and a man were in an argument. No one knows exactly what started it. Maybe a parking space. Maybe words exchanged in frustration. But it escalated quickly, loud enough for bystanders to notice. Cecilia, always guided by calmness and care, may have tried to ease the tension. She might have offered a polite gesture, perhaps even said something simple like, "Thank you," as she passed. To her, it was likely an attempt to defuse the tension, a small reminder of civility in a moment of anger. But instead of cooling things down, that tiny act of kindness became the spark that ignited tragedy. The man turned his rage toward Cecilia. Witnesses later described his expression as cold and furious, a face overcome by something darker than logic. In mere seconds, that calm afternoon shattered. Gunfire rang out across the parking lot. People ducked, screamed, and scrambled for cover. Shoppers inside dropped their items and ran toward the back of the store. The ordinary, peaceful hum of the day was gone. And there, on the pavement, Cecilia fell. The shooter fled before police could arrive. Witnesses called 911, frantic and in disbelief. When first responders reached the scene, they found Cecilia critically injured. Paramedics tried desperately to save her, but her injuries were too severe. In an instant, a kind woman's life, a mother's love, a friend's laughter, a daughter's light, was taken over something so senseless, so trivial. It left an entire community stunned. When news spread, Duncanville was shaken. People gathered outside the store, still trying to understand how something so horrific could happen over words as gentle as "thank you."
An arrest affidavit says a woman was shot and killed outside a Dallas PetSmart after getting upset at a woman for not saying thank you.
Court documents say the victim, Cecilia Simpson, was shot several times after the dispute escalated into a parking lot fight. Peyton Yeager has more on the story tonight.
The family of 41-year-old Cecilia Simpson sent Fox 4 News these photos of the Duncanville mother of two. Friends and old classmates from Duncanville ISD also mourning the loss. According to an arrest warrant affidavit, Simpson was shot and killed after becoming upset because a woman she held the door open for didn't say thank you. The argument started at the store Five Below Tuesday and then spilled over to the PetSmart in the same South Oak Cliff shopping center off Wheatland Road. Investigators say 22-year-old Kiana Hampton followed Simpson and her daughter into the PetSmart. Employees there asked them to leave.
The screaming first caught my attention.
Fox 4 spoke to a 27-year-old ER nurse who walked out of the PetSmart as the two women were arguing in the parking lot.
The lady who was the shooter was still instigating, I guess, an argument or a fight or something. But the mom and daughter tried to get in their car and de-escalate the situation, but the lady wasn't having it.
According to the affidavit, Hampton later confirmed to detectives she engaged in the verbal dispute, entering the PetSmart twice and continuing the argument, throwing the drink bottle at Simpson's car when she was about to leave and engaging in a physical altercation with her. That's when police say Hampton pulled out a gun and shot Simpson 3 times. Multiple nurses rushed to perform CPR, Simpson's daughter by her mom's side, while also on the phone with 911.
If I could just hug that daughter, I just feel so bad for her, and I just want her to know that I did everything I could. Those other people did everything they could.
Her mother, Brenda Jackson, was heartbroken. The pain in her voice cut through every interview and every vigil. She spoke about her daughter's spirit, how she loved animals, how she always showed up for people, how she believed in doing the right thing even when no one was watching. She had a heart of gold, Brenda said. She didn't deserve this. She didn't even argue. She was just being herself. That simple truth hit harder than anything else. Cecilia had done nothing wrong. She hadn't provoked anyone, hadn't escalated the situation. She was just living her life, showing kindness, offering words of peace. But somehow, that was what led to her death. In the days that followed, the community rallied. They held vigils, shared stories, and demanded answers. Candles flickered in front of the PetSmart where she was killed, surrounded by flowers and photos. People who didn't even know her stopped by to pay their respects. Cecilia's story began spreading beyond Duncanville. Local news stations carried her photo, a warm smile that captured the essence of who she was. Across social media, people shared her story with disbelief and sorrow. The hashtag Justice for Cecilia began trending as strangers across the country offered their condolences and outrage.
The seats in this yard hold heavy hearts.
It's like a bad dream that I can never wake up from.
Each one of them holding on to a memory of Cecilia Simpson.
It just don't feel real. It don't feel real.
And her son just wishing he could feel his mother's presence again.
One day you wake up with your mom next to your side, and the next day it's quiet. You know, you can't see her no more.
Cecilia died on Tuesday after she was shot at this PetSmart on Wheatland. After Dallas police say a simple act of kindness, holding the door open for a stranger, led to a shooting. Police say 22-year-old Kiana Hampton is charged with her murder.
You took her from us for no reason.
Court records say on October 7th, Cecilia held the door open for Hampton and got upset for her, quote, not saying thank you as they were leaving a store called Five Below. The argument carried over into PetSmart, where court records say Cecilia told staff Hampton was following her.
She walked away from her more than one time, and she kept on.
The argument then continued into the parking lot and turned into a physical altercation. Court records say Hampton allegedly threw a drink bottle at Cecilia, then pulled out a gun.
What provoked her to continue to engage with my mom?
And in their time of mourning, her family, they wanted you to know this.
This tragedy is all over the news. We want them to know who she was.
Cecilia was a mother of two, a sister, a daughter, a cousin, an aunt. And she loved to help people.
She was a person.
She loved her family. She loved big. She had a big heart.
And it's that love that they're choosing to hold on to.
How could something like this happen? Over words that symbolized peace. Investigators worked tirelessly, gathering surveillance footage, interviewing witnesses, and tracking leads. Every piece of evidence mattered. The community held its breath, praying for an arrest, for answers, for some kind of justice to fill the void left by this senseless act. Cecilia's family found themselves caught in a storm of grief and disbelief. For them, every headline was a reminder that their world had changed forever. Every quiet moment at home was filled with the echo of her laughter, now gone. But amid that sorrow, her mother refused to let her daughter's story fade into silence. Brenda spoke out, determined that people would remember Cecilia not just as a victim, but as a person whose kindness reflected everything good about humanity. She reminded everyone that her daughter's final moments, as tragic as they were, embodied the strength of grace. She lived with love, Brenda said. Even when faced with anger, she responded with kindness. That's who she was. In a world often hardened by anger and misunderstanding, Cecilia's final act, a simple thank you, became a haunting symbol. It was both heartbreaking and beautiful, proof that even in her last moments, she remained exactly who she had always been, kind, gentle, and full of love. Her story struck a nerve nationwide, forcing people to confront a painful question. How did we get here? How did we become a world where gratitude could spark violence? And beneath that question lay another, one that would fuel the search for justice. Who was the man who did this? As the investigation deepened, that search would reveal more than anyone expected, and the truth behind that day would change everything. The shock of Cecilia Simpson's death rippled through Duncanville like a wave that refused to settle. What began as a single violent act in a quiet PetSmart parking lot had become a wound shared by an entire community. The question burned in everyone's mind, why? How could a woman lose her life over a simple thank you? Detectives from the Duncanville Police Department began piecing together what had happened in those critical moments before the gunfire. Surveillance footage from nearby stores and traffic cameras helped outline the chain of events. The video showed Cecilia walking calmly toward her car, shopping bag in hand, the soft Texas light reflecting off the windshields around her. Just a few steps away, a man and woman were seen arguing near a vehicle. Their gestures were heated, hands thrown into the air, steps closing the distance. What investigators learned next chilled them. According to witnesses, the woman involved in the argument had accidentally blocked part of another car's path while parking. Cecilia, ever polite, had smiled and said thank you as she maneuvered past. But to the man standing nearby, that harmless word triggered rage. He shouted something back at her, something angry, something that made people turn their heads. Within seconds, he reached for a gun. That moment of fury, so sudden and senseless, had destroyed everything. Detectives identified the suspect through witness accounts and the license plate number of the vehicle that sped away after the shooting. The search began immediately, stretching across Dallas County. The suspect's face appeared on news broadcasts that night, a grim reminder of how fragile life could be in a world so easily consumed by anger. For Cecilia's mother, Brenda Jackson, the days after her daughter's death were filled with endless questions and unbearable silence. She sat in her living room, surrounded by photos of Cecilia, smiling at family gatherings, holding her grandchildren, laughing on her birthday. Each picture was a story frozen in time, a reminder of everything that had been stolen from them. Brenda couldn't stop thinking about how her daughter's final moments had unfolded. She wondered if Cecilia had even seen it coming, if she'd had a chance to speak, or if all she'd managed was that one quiet thank you. The thought tore at her heart. She replayed it over and over, trying to make sense of something that never could. As detectives dug deeper, the story behind the suspect began to emerge. He was a man known for having a short temper, someone who had been in and out of trouble before. Friends and neighbors described him as moody, often unpredictable. He was not a stranger to violence, but no one could have imagined it would lead to something this horrific, a random, public killing of a woman who meant no harm. Cecilia's story made headlines across Texas and beyond. News anchors called it a senseless act of violence over a simple thank you. Online, her photo spread like wildfire, her bright smile now attached to words like tragedy, injustice, and loss. Social media lit up with outrage. People couldn't comprehend how a moment so ordinary could turn fatal. Community members organized vigils, wearing purple ribbons to honor her memory. They held candles and prayed together, their faces illuminated in the soft glow of evening. Each person who spoke at the gathering shared how Cecilia had touched their life, whether through her kindness at church, her volunteer work, or just her presence in the neighborhood. One woman said through tears, "She was the kind of person who made you believe there was still good in this world." As time passed, police continued tracking the suspect's movements. They followed tips from the public, searching abandoned buildings and neighboring towns. Every clue mattered. Brenda, though heartbroken, stayed strong. She appeared on local news, pleading for justice, not out of revenge, but out of love. "My daughter's life mattered," she said. "She didn't deserve this. I just want the man who did it to understand what he's taken from us." Behind her composure, grief was taking its toll. Sleep came rarely, and when it did, it was haunted by memories, her daughter's laughter, her voice on the phone, the ordinary moments that now felt extraordinary in their absence. Meanwhile, the community's anger grew. Many began speaking out about the rise in violence, especially acts sparked by small confrontations, incidents that escalated simply because of wounded pride or unchecked rage. Cecilia's story became a symbol, a painful reminder of how fragile life could be when anger outweighed compassion. Then, weeks later, police received a tip that would change everything. The suspect's car had been spotted in a nearby city. Officers moved quickly, coordinating with multiple departments. They found the vehicle abandoned near an apartment complex. Hours later, after a tense search, the man was arrested without incident. The news hit like a storm. People flooded comment sections and community pages, expressing relief, sorrow, and disbelief all at once. Brenda cried when she got the call from detectives, a mix of gratitude and deep sadness. "At least now," she said softly, We can start to heal. But even with an arrest, there was no true closure. The damage had already been done. A kind woman was gone forever because someone couldn't control their temper. The emotional wreckage stretched far beyond the Simpson family, friends, co-workers, even strangers who had been touched by Cecilia's story felt the loss deeply. Brenda would later say that forgiveness wasn't impossible, but it would take time. "I know my daughter wouldn't want me to hate him," she said. "She was all about love, even when people didn't deserve it." In that moment, it became clear that the real conflict in this story wasn't just about justice in a courtroom. It was about the battle between anger and empathy, the same one that rages quietly in everyday life. Cecilia had lived on one side of that divide, always choosing love. Her killer had lived on the other, consumed by rage. And now, their worlds had collided, with irreversible consequences. As the case moved toward trial, one thing remained certain. Cecilia's story would not fade away quietly. Her name, her smile, her final act of kindness, all of it had become a call for change. The fight for justice was far from over. But even in the darkness, her light refused to go out. The arrest of the man who took Cecilia Simpson's life marked the beginning of a long and emotional road toward justice. For weeks, her name had echoed across Duncanville, through vigils, social media posts, and the soft prayers of neighbors who still couldn't make sense of what had happened. When the news of the arrest broke, there was a collective sigh of relief. But beneath that relief was something deeper: exhaustion, heartbreak, and the quiet question of whether anything could ever truly make this right. The trial began months later. In the courtroom, the atmosphere was thick with emotion. The man accused of killing Cecilia walked in wearing a prison jumpsuit, his eyes lowered, his expression unreadable. Family members sat in the front row. Cecilia's mother, Brenda Jackson, her siblings, and friends who had come to show their support. Brenda held a photo of her daughter in her hands, the same picture that had appeared on television and across social media, Cecilia's warm smile frozen in time. As prosecutors laid out their case, the details of that day returned with painful clarity. Surveillance footage was shown to the jury, the same clips detectives had watched over and over in the days after the tragedy. They saw Cecilia walking calmly toward her car, her demeanor relaxed, unaware of the danger about to unfold. They saw the argument nearby, the suspect's sudden turn toward her, the flash of movement as he raised the gun. The soundless video told the story better than words ever could. Brenda turned away when the footage played, tears sliding down her face. For her, it was unbearable to watch her daughter's final moments, moments that should have been ordinary, that should have ended with Cecilia getting into her car and driving home. Instead, they ended with silence. Witnesses took the stand, recounting the horror they'd seen that afternoon. One woman, her voice trembling, said, "She didn't do anything. She just said thank you." And then, he pulled out the gun. It all happened so fast. Her words hung in the air, heavy and unforgettable. When the defense spoke, they tried to paint a picture of a man who had snapped, who acted out of sudden rage rather than intent. But to the people sitting in that courtroom, it didn't matter what label they put on it. A life had been taken, a gentle, compassionate life, over something so small, so absurd, that it left everyone searching for meaning. Brenda addressed the court during the victim impact statement. Her voice was steady, but every word carried the weight of a broken heart. "My daughter was the kind of person who believed in kindness," she said. "She believed that love could calm anger. She believed people were good. And even in her last moments, she showed that. She didn't fight. She didn't shout. She was just being herself, and that's what cost her life." The courtroom was silent as she spoke. Some jurors looked down, others blinked back tears. Brenda's strength filled the room, her pain impossible to ignore. When the verdict was finally read, guilty on all counts, there was no applause, no celebration, just quiet relief. Justice, at least in part, had been served. The man who ended Cecilia's life would spend decades behind bars. But even that couldn't erase the pain. Nothing could. Outside the courthouse, Brenda stood surrounded by supporters and reporters. The wind brushed through her hair as she looked into the cameras and spoke softly. "There are no winners here," she said. "We're grateful for justice, but I would trade it all just to hug my daughter again." As the months passed, Cecilia's story continued to echo far beyond Texas. Churches, schools, and advocacy groups shared her story as a lesson, a reminder of the importance of kindness, but also of the danger that comes when anger goes unchecked. Her name became a symbol for peace in the face of senseless violence. The community of Duncanville created a small memorial near the PetSmart parking lot where she lost her life. It wasn't grand, just a simple plaque surrounded by flowers, with her photo in the center and the words, "Let kindness live on." People still stop by to leave candles or say a quiet prayer. Some bring their children to show them that even a small act, like a thank you, can carry meaning, and that the world must do better to protect gentle souls like Cecilia. Brenda, in her quiet strength, began speaking publicly about her daughter's life. She didn't want her story to be defined by the violence, but by the love that came before it. She talked about Cecilia's laughter, her devotion to family, her love for animals, and her unshakable faith. Through her pain, Brenda found purpose, to remind others that compassion still matters, even when the world feels angry and divided. In interviews, she said, "If my daughter's story can make one person pause before reacting in anger, if it can save one life, then her light hasn't gone out. It's still shining." And that light truly does continue to shine. Across social media, people share her story as a reminder to choose kindness. Her photo appears on digital tributes, next to quotes about patience, peace, and gratitude. Her legacy has become more than the tragedy, it's a message. Cecilia's story forces us all to look inward. How many times have we let frustration guide our actions? How often do we forget that every stranger is someone's loved one, someone's mother, daughter, or friend? As the video of the story closes, the reflection is simple but powerful. Cecilia's final act wasn't one of anger or fear. It was kindness. And that's how she should be remembered. Let her story remind us that peace begins with something small. A smile. A thank you. A moment of patience instead of rage. Because somewhere, someone's life might depend on it. If Cecilia's story moved you, if her grace, even in tragedy, touched your heart, take a moment to honor her memory. Share her story. Spread kindness in her name. And let's remind the world that compassion is stronger than hate. Because love, even when met with cruelty, always finds a way to endure.